Hi, I'm Agent Ford. Do you think you can help me solve another true crime mystery? It was February 11th, 1979, when a group of 5 friends took the day off to go on a fishing trip on a 17-foot Boston whaler, the Sarah Joe. They left from the town of Hana, located on the southeast shore of the Hawaii island, Maui, around 10 a.m., when the water was calm and it was a clear day. The men on the trip had been friends for years, and between them, they had over 50 years of seagoing experience. Suddenly, out of nowhere around 1 p.m., a terrible wind arose. It was the first warning that a storm was about to strike. Everyone on the island could read the sign. The families of the 5 men waited for their loved ones to come home, but the years passed, and no one heard from them ever again. What happened to the 5 strong, young, and experienced men aboard that boat remains a part fact and part fiction. The Sarah Joe forever changed the lives of 5 families and rocked the small, tight-knit town. It's a tale, a story that lives thanks to generations of people living in East Maui, and it's still surrounded by mystery. That fateful morning, a group of long-term friends made a decision that would have soon changed their lives completely. It was a lovely day. The water was calm, and Ralph Maliakini borrowed his twin brother's boat to go on a fishing trip with his best friends, Benjamin Kalama, Scott Moorman, Patrick Wasiner, and Peter Hanchett. Between them, they had over 50 years of seagoing experience, and one of them was even a professional fisherman. What could have gone wrong? They left the harbor around 10 a.m. that morning, but a freak wind arose from the mountains in a couple of hours, shortly causing a terrible storm with strong winds and crashing waves. One of the men's fathers rushed to the shoreline to try spotting the boat and wave the fishermen in, but he couldn't see the Sarah Joe. The night passed, and as the sun rose the following day, more people returned to continue searching for the boat, including marine biologist John Naughton and the Coast Guard. They had helicopters and ships, and the search expanded as the days passed while residents of Hana combed the beaches, looking for the wreckage. However, they came up empty-handed. 5 days later, a total of 73,000 miles had been searched, but no trace of the Sarah Joe or the 5 men aboard was found. So the Coast Guard suspended the operation and gave up the search. However, they never gave up hope. Ralph Maliakini, Benjamin Kalama, Scott Moorman, Patrick Wasiner, and Peter Hanchett seemed to have vanished into thin air, and no wreckage of the Sarah Joe was close to being found. Friends and families gathered in grief, always hoping deep down at the bottom of their hearts that one day their loved ones would return home. Almost 10 years had passed, and people were getting ready to commemorate the 10th anniversary of the boat's disappearance, when, on September 9th, 1988, the case of the Sarah Joe took a bizarre twist, and a strange turn of events brought everything back. On that day, John Naughton, the marine biologist who had helped with the search of the boat 9 years prior, was on a wildlife expedition in the Marshall Islands, located 2,000 miles west of Maui, when, while near a deserted atoll called Teonji, he suddenly spotted a small boat. He and his crew went to check on the wreckage, and about 60 yards from it, they discovered a makeshift grave. It contained a pile of coral rocks and a crudely made wooden cross, and a human jawbone was pointing out of the rocks. Naughton left the site after recording the registration numbers of the boat, and he immediately gave them to the Coast Guard, who ran a check of the numbers and made a surprising discovery. That wreck was the Sarah Joe. Experts agree that the boat could have drifted the 2,000 miles to the Marshall Islands. However, that site had already been searched in 1985, and no trace of the Sarah Joe was found. So, where's the boat been between its 1979 disappearance and the 1985 survey? However, after the wreckage was identified, authorities excavated the nearby gravesite. They uncovered a partial human skeleton, which was later identified as one of the 5 missing men, Scott Moorman. The grave also contained unusual pieces of paper, which are believed to be part of a Chinese burial ritual symbolizing money and fortune in the next life. These papers had been buried intentionally, but by who? The most popular theory is that Chinese fishers found Scott's body and buried him, dodging reporting the corpse since they were fishing there illegally. Now that pieces of information seem to have reopened the case, the families of the missing men hired Steve Goodnow, a private investigator, to look into the matter. He took a team to the Marshall Islands and discovered the boat's engines wedged underwater in nearby coral. He hypothesized that it is unlikely the boat could have reached the Taongi Lagoon without human interference, given the narrow channel between the reefs and islands. However, Goodnow's work couldn't provide further information, and the families were forced to have their hearts crushed once again. Still, too many questions and enigmas haunt the case of the Sarah Joe. The families of the missing men hope that they will learn what happened to their loved ones one day. But it seems more unlikely as days go by. Ultimately, the Sarah Joe is just one of the greatest tragedies and mysteries to arise from Hana, and its mystery does not riddle family members in the same way others may be. It's all speculation, they say. Everyone has their own thoughts on it. The thing is that they didn't come back. They're gone, and the quicker we accept that, the quicker we heal. In the early 90s, the Coast Guard returned Sarah Joe to its original owner, Robert, Ralph Maliakini's twin brother. With its faded paint, it now sits in his driveway as a daily reminder that my brother and his friends are still out there. Let me know what you guys think about this case in the comments below. I always look forward to reading your interesting theories, and I definitely want to hear them for this case. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with your fellow investigators. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a case. With that being said, stay safe, and I'll see you guys at the next crime scene.